By God, I think we're live. Hopefully you guys can see and hear me fine. I've been testing for the last half an hour, but I'm never sure until I press the button. Let me know in the comments if something isn't working. Looking forward to your sessions. Nobody said they can't hear me yet, so I'll assume it's all good. I'm Thomas Michaud for those of you who are new here, and we're going to do questions and answers for playing guitar. This is RGS Live. For those of you who are in my Real Guitar Success program, at the end we're going to do a drawing for those who've completed the practice sessions for the month. I'm going to start off with a burning question, and then I'll go on to answer more questions that have been submitted ahead of time, as well as in the comments. Feel free to keep adding your questions in the comments. And if you could start with the word question, it would help me. There's a lot of comments too, and that way I won't have to sort through each individual one. So here's the first question. Trying a new technology there. What is the difference between a diminished chord and a half diminished chord? And, how can you use those to their full advantage? So diminished chords and half diminished chords I consider them kind of spicy chords. They're really very useful if you use them in the right way in the right place. In and of themselves, they don't sound like much, but at the right time, they really help chord progressions sparkle and have some pizzazz. Now, the diminished chord is 3 notes, and I'm going to play the notes of an A diminished chord here. A, C, E flat. You see, it's a minor until you get to the 5th note. It's a flat. So a minor would be. Oh, I see. the questions got in my way. There we go. We better hide that. Now, a half diminished chord is very similar, but it has an additional note. In this case, a G. So, diminish. Often, by the way, in real situations, we use something called a fully diminished, which adds one more note, the 7th. That's a G flat. A, C, E flat, G flat. Half diminished would be A, C, E flat, same, and now G, half step up. Now, that diminished chord has a certain symmetry because everything is exactly one minor third apart. They're minor thirds stacked on each other. And it has the interesting characteristic. If you take any note in the chord and call that the root, it works. In other words, on an A, it could be an A diminished, it could be a C diminished, E flat diminished, or G flat diminished, because every interval is exactly the same. So you can kind of turn it any which way. Not so much with the half diminished. There are common fingerings for the diminished chord, 3 that I like to use. Here's the first one. Oh, I don't have to put it up so far now. There. It doesn't quite sound with that. There, got it. And this is a common one. I use that a lot. And this one, not so much. Or not as much, I should say. So those are the 3 most common fingerings, at least that I use and know. Let's talk about some uses for the fully diminished. Now, the fully diminished chord can be used in a variety of different ways. Keep in mind that in and of itself, it's kind of harsh sounding, but it makes a great passing chord from one chord to another because it creates that tension and then resolves it in the next chord. One good place for that is when you're moving in the bass notes by half steps. Here's an example. F. I'm going to go to F sharp diminished, G, G sharp diminished, and A minor 7 in this case. So I'm going up the bass notes. The diminished chords are tying the chords together and giving a little pizzazz. Now, here's another use. I consider this a kind of a substitute for a 5-chord in the key. So for an example, I'll use the E minor chord. We can call it in the key of D major, that's a 2-chord. 2, 5, 1. But instead of that A7 for the 5-chord, I'm going to go E minor, C sharp diminished to the 1 chord. Again. Adds a kind of a color that is a little more exotic than just the 5-chord. And finally, kind of used as an effect or dramatic effect, or has a spooky, tense sound. So here's an example that'll make more sense. We've all heard that in movie soundtracks or somewhere in videos. And it's been used forever. Again. Resolved on a nice major 7th chord. By the way, these could be the same chord flipped around. I call it an E diminished, G diminished, E flat diminished, and it could be D flat diminished. There it is. D flat's same as C sharp. So you'll see if you download the sheet that I'm going to have available on the notes, it'll say C sharp diminished, same as D flat diminished. Okay, half diminished chord. Now the half diminished chord often is a substitute for the 2-chord in a key. So in a minor key, let's use this one. I know. 2, 2, 5, 1. So A minor is the key. 2-chord, B instead of B minor, I'm using B diminished. 5-chord, E7, and A minor. Well, let's take that a little farther. Here's another progression, same key. Start with A minor. That's a 6th chord in the key. The 2-chord using the half diminished. And 5-chord. I can combine these two. 2, 5-chord, and 1. Now the half diminished chord, don't get too attached to this being the only way you can use it. As a matter of fact, I'll show you another one, which I just consider this more of a passing chord. Open chords. That's G, C sharp, half diminished, and then C. You see, C sharp, the bass note goes down to the C. That's what I call passing chord. And here's right out of one of my tunes that I've composed on my first CD. A, E, half diminished, F, G, I'm not sure how to label that in terms of its function, but it works. It works in my ears. And finally, that's what I want to leave you with. You don't have to follow certain formulas and rules. Best is to play progressions and use formulas and rules to kind of get some hint of where to go, but listen to what sounds good, especially to you, and what sounds like something else that other people are used to hearing, and little by little get used to using them in a way that sounds good, as opposed to thinking, oh, this has got to be a function here or there. That's only a good hint to kind of give you a place to look for something that sounds good. Okay. Oh, I'm not gonna put this away. I'm gonna keep using it, and let's go on to the next question. How often should a guitar be checked by a luthier to see if it needs adjustment? I would say, of course, it depends on how much you play and some of the conditions the guitar is being stored in. I'd say roughly, if I were to just pick a number, I'd say once a year. It could use some tweaking once a year. It just depends on where your tolerance is of strings are high off the frets and that kind of thing. I like to have my guitars looked at roughly once a year, but I don't really plan it that way. I'm looking for something else in the guitar that needs a little tweaking, and I'll say, oh, this is a good time to go ahead and give it an adjustment. Is it true if one string breaks, you should change all the strings? Maybe. When you put a new set of strings on your guitar and one string breaks, you don't have to change all the strings. You can just change that one string. But if you've had strings on your guitar for a while, months, let's say, it's likely the new string that you put on will sound quite a bit different than the other strings. And that's where I'd probably use it as a cue, so to speak, of go ahead and change all the strings. I don't want that one string to stick out and sound brighter and the rest of them sound a little bit dull. Discuss some exercises for changing between open and barre chords. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to some specific lessons on that. I mean, of course, we could spend a full hour easily on that. I would suggest that one of the most popular go-to exercises is to just play the chords C to F. It's because that change is used so often in so many songs, and you'll get a lot of bang for your buck if you practice those two chord changes from C to F. Now, when I change, to be clear, Tony's also asking what fingers to move. When I change like this, I put the bar down, put my pinky down, and move the second finger over in roughly, well, to be honest with you, at the same time. And you might not be able to do that at first at the same time. Start slow and work at it, but that's what you're aiming for. Next question. I've never played with a pick, but can't get used to one. Any suggestions? Can I just stay with what's comfortable, or am I giving in too easily? So John is wondering if you can just get by without a pick altogether. And the answer is yes. It depends on the styles of music you want to play. If you want to play rock, hard rock music, for the most part, you probably a good idea to learn to use a pick. Though Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits uses his fingers for some pretty rock and roll music. But most rock players find they can play with more facility with a pick. Folk style, you can do either finger picking or strumming with your fingers or with a pick. I prefer students to be able to use both. It's not that hard to use the pick, but there is a kind of a initial struggle to get it to stay in your hand and to hold it in such a way that you're not concentrating all the time on how your fingers are moving with the pick. One thing that a lot of students have problems with is the pick falling out. And I really like to use something called, they have a bunch of different names. It's a type of a little round sticky thing that sticks on your pick. Gorilla Grips is one popular brand, but there's actually half a dozen. This isn't Gorilla Grips, but it looks the same. And it's the last one I've been using. I think it's called Deer something. I forgot the actual name. Let me see. Big Deer. But it's pretty much the same stuff. I put that on the pick, and it's so much easier for me to hold on to the pick that way. Some people like to drill a hole in the pick too. That hole lets the flesh of your thumb go through just enough to give it a little grip. For me, that's a hassle. I'd rather just stick this little sticky thing on. And of course, you can buy picks that already have some rough texture to it, so it holds better as well. I'm going to include a couple links to some lessons on the pick. It's not as hard as you think. It's one of those things that it doesn't look like it works at first, so I must not be able to do it. But believe me, if you just practice a little at a time with a pick, but you don't have to. It really is a personal decision. You can play without a pick. As a matter of fact, frankly, on my CDs, I play 2/3 of the time without a pick, 1/3 with a pick for some particular fast melodies. I'm learning songs by working on 2 measures, get those down, and then adding the next measure. And I keep going like that. Is that okay? Yeah, that's a good way to break songs down. Do it, chunk it down, piece at a time, and then put them together. Now, before that, what I like to do is look at the song and look for any patterns in the song. I don't want to start from beginning of a song and just go measure by measure. I want to see where the patterns are, so I don't get to the 24th measure and keep plugging along when in reality it's the same as the first 12 measures, first 24 measures. Look for the patterns. And this is where it's really helpful to learn, maybe a handful of common chord progressions, because they come up a lot in pop music, pop, country, even jazz, blues. Then, once you see the patterns, go to that pattern and break it down that way into 2 measures, 4, depends on how hard it is. Depends on where you're at. If it's all new chords, you probably start off practicing the chords and then put them into the song in order. Next, is it okay to go slow when learning to strum? Yes, it is. And as a matter of fact, I recommend it, but not exclusively. You need to push yourself sometimes just to get a feel for what it's like or what it should sound like when you start going faster. And practicing something like a strum is not an even a little faster, a little faster, a little faster. A lot of it is, but every once in a while you need to push, and every once in a while you need to slow down even slower and fix something that has gotten off. So it's not one absolute right way to think about it, but slow is a part of that toolkit that you use to learn the strum, and a big part of it. Start slow, stay relaxed. That's a big thing, and that's one thing you got to watch for when you're playing slow is you tend to tense up because you're trying to get it just right. Keep coming back to if you know yourself tensing, maybe even take the pick out and just shake your hand a little bit and come back at it. Really, that's what makes the strum, a fast strum, sound good. That's not a good sounding strum. Here's relaxed. That's harder to do slower for me, but I had to do it slow a long time ago to get up to that place. Okay, let's get that off the screen. As I'm moving forward with real guitar success, I'm working in the Fingerstyle and the barre chord module. Is it okay to camp out those 2 modules until complete? Yes, absolutely, Rogelio. I meant, without being too strict about it, the real guitar success to kind of do one thing and then another and another. But I did find over the years that's not really how many people work. And everybody's a little different, so there's room for different personalities. But some people like to jump around. I suggest too much jumping around can make you feel frustrated because you miss some of the stuff before that will help you. But at the same time, to just strictly do one thing and then get to another can be really frustrating and boring to some people. So maybe that's a good one for you, Rogelio, is just to have 2 of the courses going, and they're both complementary, the Fingerstyle and the barre chords. They're kind of using different aspects of guitar playing, so you're not just always hammering on the same thing over and over. And you do need barre chords, and I'm glad to see that you're taking advantage of the Fingerstyle adventures also. I'm poking around Cakewalk and learning how to use it. Any tips on that? So that's a whole can of worms, of course. Cakewalk is software for recording. It's free now on the PC, and it's a full-fledged recording software. It's actually not that hard to learn, but there's a lot to it. If you try and use all the features, yes, it takes a long time to learn them all. I would just go on YouTube and type in a beginner cakewalk, and you'll find tons of videos. Matter of fact, I still once in a while, just to use a certain feature or to get some new ideas, I'll find, I like the tips videos, 10 tips on using Cakewalk better, and I usually find 1 or 2 that I didn't know about. I probably at some point make a Cakewalk video, in other words, how to use recording software like Cakewalk to compose a song, and I mean an instrumental song. But for now, there's so much stuff on YouTube, you won't go wrong. Any tips on playing the F chord? I'm still struggling. You're not alone, Bonnie. This is for a lot of people, kind of a barrier to kind of moving forward. F chord. So a couple of tips. The biggest problem I see with students with F chord is they try to jump right into it and then use it in a song. It is a whole different level than if you've been playing open chords. So to assume that it's the next thing you just work on a little while and fit it into a song is it's a fallacy. It usually doesn't work. It's like trying to jump up a 2-story building with no ladder or any way to do it, just by sheer force. The way to handle that is to break it down into pieces and work on it a little at a time. So I have students practice just doing the bar a little every day. I'm talking for weeks at a time. And yes, it is okay to use my second finger there. I'm not trying to just get it with my first finger. Then I have them practice I call power chords, which are basically just part of a chord. So here's a power chord. And then we'll up the power chords, start adding the pinky. Add the second finger. You see, now I've got just about a chord without the bar. And of course, the bar is the hardest part. But you've been practicing the bar, then you start trying to put them together and practice exercises that use the bar chord, not plug it into a song and try to keep track of all these things going on at one time. Then, when you can do the exercises, then you start using it in songs little by little, knowing that you might have to stop and work out a little bit more, and little by little, you'll get it. There is a course in Real Guitar Success called Bar Chords for Everyone. I guide you through this step by step. You really can't do it on your own. It's just, for a lot of people, it's helpful to have somebody guide them through the steps. And I'll tell you this, when I played the F chord at first, I really did think I'd never really play it well. Now it's easy. I don't even think about it. You'll get there. Persistence really does pay off. What can a first or second year guitarist do to reduce tension in the fretting hand? I find it difficult to release one chord to move quickly to the next. Paul, good question. 2 exercises I encourage you to practice. And the deal here is you can't just do it one time. You have to do it for maybe 5 days in a row, and then let it go and then come back at it again later. 2 exercises. One is just playing a simple warm-up exercise. I'll pick this one because it is one of the simplest ones. And play the note and then back off and see where it doesn't sound anymore. Spend 5 minutes doing that. What you're doing is trying to find out how much pressure you need to press that note. And I don't mean intellectually. I mean, you're trying to train your fingers to find that place and not press any harder. Now, this is something even experienced guitar players have to do once in a while. They get used to tensing up too much and putting too much pressure, and it wears on your hand. I've had 2 professional friends, great guitar players, get carpal tunnel from using too much effort. And they had to go to therapy, back off, use thinner strings, and train themselves to not put so much pressure on when they're playing the guitar. So that's one. The other is to practice 2 chords at a time and go very slow, changing the chords, and again, see how much pressure you need to make the chord sound okay. Back off. Now it's not sounding. Now press a little more and get it to where it sounds good. Then go to the next chord. Do the same thing. No, that's not enough. Not enough. There, I got it. No more. Stop there. If I feel like I'm tensing too much, stop, back up. And again, slowly, I got it. Now go to the next chord. Try that with a few different chords, depending on where you're at, Paul. If you know a whole bunch of chords, try that with 2 chords at a time. You're focusing on your fingers and pressure, so you don't need to do that on, a big, long chord progression. That just distracts you. Focus on the left hand, the fingering. Again, a little bit every day, 5 minutes, 5 days a week. It gets to be a habit. You integrate that into your playing. Let it go for a while. Maybe a month or 2 later, do the same thing again. Another 5 days. Do that as a warm-up. It does work. It's a little bit tedious, but it works. Okay, so that's all the pre-submitted questions. Let's go over here and see what we got. Oh, I can make it bigger. And feel free to keep adding questions in the chat if you like. It really helps me if you add the word question before, because there's a lot of comments, and I might pass over your question thinking it's a comment. Let's see now. So John Picos is asking the same thing about the pick. So we pretty well just covered that. You can just use your fingers, and we talked about ways to get into a pick. And I will put links in the show notes to lessons on using a pick and getting to where you can use a pick more comfortable. Question, we got one. Do we have to perfect to submit your progress, or how does this work? Please. Do we have to be perfect to submit our progress? Or no, Rogelio, I wouldn't. First of all, if you wait till you're perfect, it's not going to happen. And there's two ways. I think he's talking about submit your work, make a recording with your phone and submit it in the form. We have something called the stage where you can submit something you're playing. No, that's the thing about Real Guitar Success. We're all in this together, and you're with other students. We're all learning. So people know that you're not doing it to be perfect. It's a good goal to just record the best you can and then submit it, and then come back and do it again a month later and do it better. It gives you something to work for. And, one way or another, you're successful just by doing that, regardless of how well you actually play it. Next question. I completed the beginner's journey and I'm playing songs now, but I'm not sure whether to jump to another journey, barre or fingerstyle. Is there a practice progression I should be following? So yes, Greg, you would want to go to the Barre Chords for Everyone course. You've completed the 6th adventure, the beginner's journey, and the next logical one is the Barre Chords for Everyone. You need the barre chords. We're going to break it down step by step. But in the process, I'm going to integrate some more music theory, chord progressions, and even going from barre chords to open chords. So it's more than just how to play a barre chord. I use that as kind of a foundation to integrate next level beyond the beginner's journey. There is another course that you may want to consider, totally up to you, called Fingerstyle Adventures. Now, this one, I deliberately didn't use any barre chords, so you could play that either in conjunction with the barre chord course, or you could go through it, or before you go to the barre chords. You're not going to need barre chords. But it's up to you. If you have no interest in fingerstyle, just skip it. No problem. Okay. Looking for question. So this is all the questions that I can see. If you have another question, please start with the word question. Well, it'll be at the end. I'm not too worried about that. I'm going to go ahead and do the drawing for this month, and then I'll go back and see if there's any last-minute questions to answer before we move on. Now, these, again, are people who have completed the practice sessions for the month of, where are we at? April, right? We're in May, so that was April. And that means there's one session a day. You just spend 10 minutes on it, and it's different aspects of playing guitar. When you've checked off all 20, at the end of the month, you get put in a drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. And let's see who is the winner for this month. Sissel, you're in. The dedicated student, Sissel. Good work. And good work to all of you who completed the practice sessions. The real reward is that you've that much better on playing your guitar and a sense of accomplishment. But Sissel, you'll also get a gift card. Let's see, any last minute questions? Joseph says, at 72, my fingers don't work as well as they used to. Yes, I can relate. At 67, my fingers don't work as well as they used to, but thank God they still work. We use what we got. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's really been a pleasure having you. And I'm hoping that you'll submit some questions ahead of time for the next Real Guitar session. We'll do this the first Thursday of every month, and the next one will be, that's April, May, June. I forget the date, but first Thursday of June. I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks again. Bye for now.